Welcome to More Than Legal, the show where we go behind the scenes to uncover the fine print of power, purpose, and profit. I'm your host, attorney Danielle Laughlin. After almost 2 decades in the trenches of courtrooms and boardrooms, I have learned that every move leaves a mark and every deal tells a story. What will we uncover today? Let's find out. Hey, real quick, before we dive into the episode, remember, nothing you hear on this podcast is intended to be legal, financial, or tax advice. I invite you to contact any of the guests you hear by looking in the show notes for their contact information, or if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find my contact information at daniellelaughlin.com. All right, now let's get into it. Hey, welcome to More Than Legal. I am so excited to start today's conversation as a bridge between the last episode, episode 3, with Greg Crabtree, and our upcoming episode, episode 5, with Jeremiah Bennett. This is the format that you can expect for the foreseeable future from the podcast. Since we're new and just getting started, I want to be clear about how you can expect the content to show up. We will be publishing every 2 weeks and hopefully more frequently as we go forward and get better at this. But our first idea is to bring on experts and in between those episodes to add some commentary, bridging ideas together so that you can begin to see how all of these important topics from finance and profitability all the way to culture and people align. That is the whole point of this podcast. We want to talk about the more than legal aspects of your business. So if you joined us on episode 3, then you know we talked with Greg Crabtree, and he was a hoot, okay? If you did not get that episode, please go listen. He breaks down financials and what he wants everyone to really learn who's in entrepreneurship or who are leading small companies, return on invested capital. He spends a lot of time talking with me about why that's so critical and important. Some of the details of the numbers he shares with us are based on a law firm because that's what I own, but it can apply to any business, particularly service-based businesses. Now, finance is important, right? We can't ignore the numbers, and I am all about profitability. But there's some ROI out there that doesn't actually show up on your P&L. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about what I consider creative capital, which in addition to things like intellectual property and brand, also includes something really critical to the people in your organization and even outside of it, those stakeholders that are counting on you. That's culture. Now, we've talked about culture in this culture, dare I say, many, many times. We talk about this constantly these days, and it has kind of become a buzzword. Culture has a definition, and I want to share with you the definition that I pulled from Merriam-Webster.com. Merriam-Webster defines culture as the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or organization. So there are 4 buckets here: attitudes, values, goals, and practices. Attitudes. Let me start first with attitudes. So when we talk about culture, we have to talk about mindset. What is the mindset of the people within this organization? Those mindsets really, in my view, are from the ethics or the ethos of the organization. And that is the primary issue that I am most in love with. I think that ethics and ethos is really the guiding principle for any organization. And so my purpose is to share that with others, and that's what I want to use this platform to do. I'm not going to focus on it here because we talk about it constantly and it weaves in and out of everything that we discuss, both directly, just you and I, and also with the experts that we talk to as well. So attitude for us is always going to be centered around what are the prevailing ethics within the company. And I believe that's driven largely by business ethics, stockholder theory, stakeholder theory, or something in between. I promised you that I would go deeper into that, and I will. now's not the time. I want to get a few foundational issues out of the way. And since we've already talked about profitability and financials, the next foundational issue is people, the people in the culture. And that's why we believe that there is power in both profit and people. And that's how we are successful as small businesses and, frankly, as a world, right? As a global community. So we're going to focus today on the three additional qualifications that Merriam-Webster provides in its definition and go deeper into what does that look like from a managerial standpoint? What do you need to have in place in order for these three things to even exist from an authentic place so that you have an authentic culture? Now, I'm a huge fan of AI, ethical and responsible use of AI. It's not for everything, and it certainly can't be taken off the shelf. But culture is something you cannot get from AI. It is not going to come to you from an algorithm and a machine. It's something that you have to develop over time. And I know this personally because I've lived it as an entrepreneur. Let's start first with values. For a long time, I thought values were like just words on a piece of paper in an employee manual. People put them on the wall, but they really didn't mean anything. I kind of dismissed those kind of corporate values, core values, as lies, like crap, right? And we've seen this. Some companies have core values that they definitely are not living by. And so when you see the culture of the company and then you see what their core values are, you're like, wow, they're two worlds apart, right? They don't even look like each other. You have to recognize when you are an entrepreneur, when you are a leader in a business, you have to recognize that values are really very critical. And I learned this the hard way. And maybe some of you have learned it the hard way as well. So there are no bad people. I mean, maybe there are. I'm not saying there are no criminals in the world or people who need to be behind bars for doing heinous crimes. I'm just saying that in your company, right, hopefully you're not hiring people like that are, unrepented criminals, I guess we could say, right? But when you're hiring people in your business, there are no bad people, right? There's just a bad fit. And likely if you're listening to a podcast like this, you've already accepted that idea. And you recognize that it's the leadership's responsibility to find the right people that are the right fit in the right seat, right? And so when we're talking about who, not how, and I'm forgetting the author, but we'll make sure we actually link it out. I think it's Dan, but we'll be sure to get it linked out. We are talking about really like how you are showing up for the people in your organization and setting a certain standard. These are the values. The values are from the ethos. So the general ethos of the company is going to drive the values. Let me use our business as an example of what I'm talking about. So our ethos is very much a modified stakeholder ethos. So we believe that in order for our business to be most ethical and profitable for the shareholders, i.e. me, I'm the only owner currently in the firm, that we also have to bring value to other stakeholders. That includes employees, clients, the community, and that's why we do certain things in our business to cultivate that value for those stakeholders. Because we have that ethos, i.e. that attitude about things, our values really are serving that ethos. So in our business, we have 5 core values. The first one is challenging the status quo. So what is that saying? We are not a traditional law firm. That is setting us apart from traditional stockholder theory. Very profit driven. Traditional law firms are very hierarchical in nature. The top partners make the most profit and everybody kind of branches off from there, just like you would expect in a corporate structure. And so we are not like that. We are a lot more of a team dynamic, and we do not believe that any person on the team is more important than any other person on the team. And because we challenge the status quo in our own industry and we flip that on its head and we say, actually, everyone here matters, That is showing and demonstrating through a core value what our prevailing attitude and ethos is within the company. Okay, so that's why the ethos and attitude is just kind of infiltrating all the rest of these three. All right, the second core value for us is that we are lovingly candid. So, being lovingly candid means that we are going to tell the truth without trying to make somebody wrong, without trying to demean them or one up them. Right? This is kind of like one uppedness, right? We want to be honest and direct, but we're not trying to make people wrong or make people feel bad because they have a different idea or a different belief. We just want to make sure that we're clear with what we stand for. And so we do this with our clients, we do this with our team, and the team has to be able to do that back to me, the management, in response to that. Everyone has to be lovingly candid. Again, this is from the prevailing ethos of stakeholder value. If people can't be honest, not everyone is being valued, right? And so that's, again, a core value that is a direct result of a prevailing attitude or ethos within the firm. I'm not going to go through all the core values, but we have three others, and it's exactly the same idea. So if you have core values that you're already using in your business, you need to ask yourself, like, what are these values saying about our attitude? And I'm going to give some examples because I see some of these a lot. One really common example is transparency or honesty, right? Transparency and honesty can mean different things to different people, right? But that as a core value would suggest to me more of a stakeholder ethos. Whereas if you're looking at core values that don't include something around honesty, like we just talked about, candor, right? Transparency, this idea that everybody has a right to know, right? And that doesn't mean every single thing. You've got trade secrets, you've got important financial information that obviously not everyone needs to know, but we're not hiding the ball here, is the general idea of a core value like that. If you're not careful about a core value like that, though, it could swing the other way and it could actually promote a prevailing attitude or ethos that is not aligned with that. So the reason we attach an adjective like lovingly candid is because we want to acknowledge that what the truth is that's being shared is being shared in a way that is respectful and loving to others. Okay? So that's where you got to kind of think about these core values and really assess what is it saying about the prevailing attitude within this company. If you took core values because you just were told that you had to, or you thought it was a good idea, you probably want to do some reconsideration around this, ideally with your team, because the core values should reflect what you actually hold true and what you actually value as a team, and not what you hope to achieve one day or what you hope to strive to be, or worse, something that just sounded good in the moment, or it gave you a good acronym. I've seen some folks that's like, well, here's our acronym for our values. And it's like, that's fun, that's cool, but it doesn't really mean much and it's not really saying much. Now, I'm not a guru on core values and how to build those out. I just want to acknowledge that core values are part of culture, and culture is a huge capital asset in your business. So core values is one of the ways that you can promote a positive culture, i.e. a positive ROI on your people. Second thing, goals. So the goals of an organization are what maintain accountability and alignment to the vision. So you have core values that guide what your folks are doing, how you're showing up in the world. It may even guide the types of customers or clients that you're looking for. But if you don't have goals, if you don't have a roadmap of where you're trying to go, a vision that's been cast, ideally by the visionary entrepreneur, that may be you, it may be somebody else on your team, then you are going to get somewhere, but you probably don't know where you're going to end up, right? So you're doing things, you have these guiding values, but you don't really have a vision, a long play that you're trying to get to. And that can be challenging because that means that you really probably don't have goals in your business. If you've never set goals in your business, or even if, for example, you are like a solopreneur, you own your company yourself and you have people that work with and for you, but they don't own it with you. You kind of are like the head honcho. That's how I feel sometimes in my team. And I'm always trying to tell my team, like, please do not be a yes man or woman to me. I don't want people to just tell me what I want to hear. I want to hear the truth, right? One of the reasons we have a core value around it. But I digress. Anyway, the point is, if you are kind of a solopreneur and you have not opened this dialogue to your team, that might be a good place to start in goal setting. You want goals in your company that are going to meet the profitability and growth, trajectory that you're trying to be on. And only you know that if you're the solo owner. If you have other partners, of course, you've talked about that, and they would be the best people to set your goals with. But you also want your leadership team and your key employees involved at least, right? You do want to bring in the key stakeholders that are going to drive those goals. And in addition to the financial goals, you really also want to start thinking about what are our people goals? Who do we want to hire? Who's going to help us get to that growth trajectory? You want to think about what are the tools that we may need as we grow? Do we need to learn new things? And that might help you set goals within your company as well. So, for example, we launched this podcast. It's part of what we're doing in our firm to share content and really like try to bring more value to the world. That means that we had to learn how to use some tools that we've never learned how to use before. So we had goals around scheduling this podcast, getting the right mics, how do we get it set up, which different platforms are there, how do we know which one we want to use? And it's a continual process also, right? So a lot of the goals that you have in your company may continue forward. They may never end. You're always going to have profitability and revenue goals. That's never going to stop, right? You should also always have people goals. If let's say you're kind of on the older spectrum, or maybe you've been in your company for a long period of time and you're considering exiting, you could have a goal of exiting successfully, a succession plan goal, right? So this could be startup goals, it could be growth goals, or it could be exit goals. And that's going to depend on the stage of business that you're in. It is never too late to set goals either. So if you are one of those folks who's thinking, maybe I want to do something different, maybe I want to sell or transfer my business, then start your goal setting now around the end of this business. Get into the habit of setting those goals. That's what creates a culture in your company, and that's going to make your company more valuable, right? Like you're going to sell your company for more money over the next 2 to 5 years than you otherwise would if you start doing this stuff now. Okay, so it's never too late. The third point that the Merriam-Webster definition brings up is practices. So within a business, what we're talking about when we're talking about practices are standard operating procedures, policies, processes, systems that make the business run. Depending on where you are in your growth cycle, your systems may be very mature. They may not. You may not have very mature systems. If you're a small entrepreneurial team, kind of like we are, then your systems probably change a lot. They might be in flux a fair amount. You might be learning as you go and modifying based on what you learn through that experience. That's okay. The point is you want to at least have something to guide you, right? You need to have some kind of SOP, some kind of checklist, some kind of process, even if it's not put into a shiny manual or, living on one of the fancy apps out there. And there are some, by the way, there's some good tools out there for that. You can do this anywhere on a Google Doc, a Word doc, you name it. You can put this anywhere. And if you haven't documented, use ChatGPT, right? You can use ChatGPT to formalize your practices if you have them loose and informal and help you start building these things out so that they're there to guide. If you take time and you put these 3 things in place, you will have a good culture because you will have guiding values that clearly explain who thrives here, right? Values alignment means you're thriving with others. You're not working against each other. You're not looking at each other wondering, why are you here? You don't seem to get it, right? Values is what drives your ethos, right? That mindset, right? Those values and that mindset, they all kind of work together. And you need the accountability toward the goals, right? Toward the vision. We all need to be rowing in the same direction. Am I the first rower? Am I the second rower? Am I bringing up the rear? Who am I on the team? What are my goals in my role? And to guide those goals in my role, I'm going to need some standard operating procedures. I'm going to need to understand how it should be done. Now, if you have an A plus team, you can delegate a lot of this stuff to them. So, a lot of small companies, we don't have a lot of time, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're busy, you are trying to hustle out there, you're trying to bring in new business, you're trying to promote your brand, whatever it is that your role is in your company. I know one thing for certain, you are very busy. You are very busy because I see you out there. I'm seeing you, and I know you're as busy as I am, maybe more busy than I am. You don't have to do it all yourself, right? That's another thing about that stakeholder idea and having people in your orbit that deserve to profit from your venture, right? They should profit financially, they should profit personally, and they should profit professionally just the same way that you do. Because without them, you wouldn't have your business. So if you think about culture as basically creative capital, right? It's creative capital. It's the unseen capital that doesn't show up as a line item on your P&L. Then the role of you, the founder, or you, the executive, you, the leader, is very similar to a producer, okay? Think about a producer's job. A producer goes on set. They're going to, let's say it's a film. They're going to corral all the cats, right? They're going to get the actors together. They're going to get the gaffers, the lighting, the photographers, the director of photography, all of those folks, the executive producer who might just be there from a visionary standpoint, the creative director. There's just a ton of people that producer is going to have to bring together. Those are all stakeholders in the success of the film. That's exactly how you want to think of your business. You have a bunch of people that are showing up to perform. In the example of a producer, they're performing a creative work. So is your team. Your business is a creative work. There's no blueprint for what you're doing, right? I mean, even if you have a franchise, you don't even have that big of a blueprint other than make the burger like this. Everything else in the back office, you have to figure that out, right? You have to figure out the P&L. You have to figure out how to manage people. So what does the producer do? Well, they remove things that are not part of the story, that don't work, that aren't going to be beneficial to the other stakeholders, right? So let's say there's some dialogue in the film and it's distracting, or it doesn't read right, or the actors just can't get it right, maybe. A producer, in conjunction with some other people, of course, is going to be the person that says, I don't think this is working. This needs to come out. This is not giving us the vibes we want. It's not leading to the vision, right? That's the vision of the film. That's the vision of this story that we're telling. And that's exactly what your team is doing when they show up to work with you to achieve these visions that you've cast for them. Now, here's the nuance. Great producers, they don't just dictate what other people need to be doing. They draw it out of others. They help others see that creative vision. They show them that, hey, I'm not the dictator. I'm not the one that's saying it has to be this way. What I want to show you is why I don't think that this is going to lead to the result that we want. And then hopefully there will be a consensus around that, right? Knowing when to step in, when to say, hey, I'm not sure we're on the right track, and when to step back and let the creative process flow. Because the producer, just like an entrepreneur or a leader in a business, they're not the ones acting and doing the lighting and, setting the right, tone with the set. They're not doing all that creative work. They're just overseeing it just like you are in your business. So that brings me to what's next on the pod. Well, you're going to hear from a producer, Jeremiah Bennett. He is going to talk about not production and his experience as a producer from a technical standpoint, but he's going to tell you story. He is going to tell you story around his passion, which is beekeeping, super interesting, and how beekeeping has a lot to teach us about cultivating a culture within an organization that helps it thrive. So he is going to really draw this analogy in with the bees. I think you're going to love it. And yes, I took you from a chicken farmer to a beekeeper. I mean, wow, you're welcome. But seriously, these are the types of analogies and stories that our hearts want to hear and our hearts want to know. And it helps us to process what is otherwise pretty dense stuff, right? Talking about culture is kind of dense. There's a lot of moving parts, and it takes time to get it right. I'm on the same journey that you're on, right? We're just trying to build something in the world that matters, and we want to do it with people that are values aligned to what we believe. And so hopefully what you will gather from the conversation with Jeremiah is how can you take less of a controlling role and more of a flow perspective, like a hive, like a beehive. How can you create a hive culture? It's very interesting. I hope you find value in next episode, and I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, remember, nothing in the world will change unless you change it. So get to work on that culture, and remember, it is a journey, not a destination, and we're all here together. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the show. Remember, stay sharp, stay curious, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye for now.